let's move on to page 2 of the Standard. Of course, this is an unenviable story to cover and, of course, discuss, but we cannot, ignore the fact that we have lost 2 leaders in quick succession to cancer. And, of course, the next angle that would be covered is the burial and, of course, anything surrounding how they're going to be sent off by their loved ones. Now, on page 2 of the Standard, we're told Okoth's paternal kin request to bury him, and they're pictured right there, members of the family who are claiming to have paternal relations to the late Ken Okoth stand near a grave in Homa Bay. The family said it is ready to bury Okoth. And on page 3, we have another story about Dr. Laboso, who's going to be buried in Kisumu, and we've just been told about the preparations by family and, of course, those who have been hired to do that. Pictured there is Bomet Deputy Governor Dr. Hilary Bachurch, who is signing a condolences book. So naturally, this is how things would progress. We're being told on the front page about given a snippet of the plans. Bomet Governor will be buried on Saturday at Kadenge Village, while Ken Okoth's body will be flown to Kabondo in Homa Bay for viewing. Then it will be taken back to Nairobi for cremation. Smack in the middle right there is another story that actually now ties the two together.
Yes.
Make cancer treatment free, House tells Senate.
Absolutely.
So the whole page has to do with the loss of the leaders and, of course, what killed them and some of the things that can be done to help alleviate the pain of those suffering from the disease.
This is a fundamental issue, Trix, I must say, and it's a very emotive issue.
It is.
And when the country is actually mourning the loss of these great 2 leaders, of course, tying together with Kolimo's demise, it begs the question on the role of our legislative arm of government, what it can do. But I can still tie this together with the Nation's Tunes editorial section, where they are still discussing about the issue.
That is page 14 of the Nation.
Absolutely. Trix, it's very sad that as a country we are still burying our heads in the sand when thousands and hundreds of Kenyans are dying or have been detected with this couch. I must admit that if we are able to be taken through this, if we are able to witness death of politicians who are able to make key decisions, fundamental decisions on how to prevent the whole scourge from actually affecting our population. What about the common man who is unable actually to get a simple process in terms of detection, in terms of diagnosis,
or even insurance.
But these are great leaders who are in a better position financially to address the issue, but they are being affected day and night. And therefore, I think it's a high time that the government takes a different look at the whole theory, surrounding cancer, from legislation to funding, and this calls a different approach. And I want to say that a new paradigm shift is required in terms of approaches that we are applying to deal with cancer. First of all, the issue of the facilities, the issues of funding, the issue of legislation declaring cancer as a national disaster. These are some of the discourses that we need to take on with a lot of vigor and, with a lot of emotion, because tomorrow today is the Laboso family and the Okoth's family, but tomorrow you never know whom cancer is going to strike.
And
so we need to put a lot of what we call proactive measures to ensure that cancer does not rob us, good
leadership. Anybody could be affected, because this is what we are seeing from the who's people who can afford actually treatment even abroad. So the question is access to treatment and early detection. But clearly this is not something that we can all afford, or the government hasn't done all it can do.
But you ask yourself also, Trix, before you depart from that. When you listen to the stories coming from outside countries such as India, and also part of some of hospitals in South Africa and UK, you hear that most of the attendees or most of the patients are Kenyans. 50%.
Finding cheaper treatment outside this country.
When you cannot put your systems or your houses in order, I think, to me, it calls for a waking call up for us to rethink about the strategies that we are applying to ensure that we conquer this battle.
And to play devil's advocate, there have been actually politicians who have thrown their weight behind the push for better access of treatment and just better handling of the whole disease, because we have Honorable Warogoro Okoro, as well as Esther Passaris, who are calling for better measures, as well as entertaining the debate on drugs that have cannabis that can actually help alleviate the symptoms and the pain that some of the sufferers go through.
Yeah, I think that's also a good approach, although they are addressing a situation where the cancer has already picked up.
Very advanced.
But how do we pick from the ground zero and now address the whole value chain of cancer?
So that we don't even have to get to
where
level.
now they are talking about.
Yeah, absolutely, which is quite...
That's being proactive, actually.
Yeah, and it's important to note that at least 70 to 80% of Kenyans find out they have the disease when it's
advanced stage, when there's little that can be done.
Yeah, and at that point, even we have to have the conversation about hospice facilities that are not quite available to everybody.
And also the preventive measures. Actually, personally, I advocate for preventive measures. How do you educate, create advocacy, platforms and awareness campaigns to ensure that Kenyans are able to understand on how to change their lifestyles to ensure that they beat the issue of even being able to catch up this dreadful disease. How do they change their lifestyles? What are the preventive measures? What can be done so that you are cancer-free? And what are the measures that you need to do to stay cancer-free?
Absolutely. Now, that's the conversation that you're going to be having throughout the show in our press segment, as well as later on Your Health. We'll be taking a look at all the elements that come into cancer treatment, what needs to change, as well as what you need to be doing with your lifestyle in order to remain healthy. But as far as press review, let's move on, is concerned. Let's move on to page 5, where our court marshals support for bail in the counties. This has to do with that Punguza Mizigo initiative that is being headlined by Third Way Alliance leader Dr. Ekuro Okoth at the Murang'a County Assembly. He is pictured right there. That's what you're seeing on your screen. And of course, a quote from that story, we want to read from the same script as other county assemblies, and to this effect, we will convene a meeting through the county assembly's forum so that we know how we are going to handle the motion across all countries. And this is the Nairobi County Speaker Chege Mwaura, who's being quoted in this particular story. What do you feel about this one?
Wow, this is a very interesting one, and it's actually taking a build-up. From now onwards, I think this is going to occupy our media space for quite some time. I must admit, because Tricks, when you look at our futuristic space in terms of politics, it's going to be anchored on matters of changing the constitution through the referendum, the BBI initiative, and also the Punguza Mzigo. Of course, one thing that most of the key political players are agreeing on is the need for constitutional amendments. That has not, I have no doubt about that. Most are advocating for this, but the approach is where now the division comes in, because they are saying, look, we have the BBI initiative that has, was an initiative of the handshake, as a result of the handshake. And it was geared, or it was aimed actually at addressing some of these issues, including, constitutional amendments, to have a better platform to advocate for better governance in our country. But here comes another initiative, the Punguza Mzigo initiative, which has come through the constitutional, provision of Article 257, where they are talking about popular initiative. But I want to say that both initiatives are aimed at addressing the very measures that are needed to ensure that Wanjiku is offloaded the burden of cost of living. And he has a platform to exercise his democratic rights. But here, the means does not justify the end, because they are saying what I'm seeing from our court's initiative is that it doesn't play within the garrows of the big boys. And I want to say that if this bill came from Baba or from maybe NASA or from maybe a bigger boy, let me say that politically, if this came from Raila, perhaps we would be seeing it with a different prism or from a different lens. We would be able to support it. But because it's coming from maybe an unstarter, let me put it that way, perhaps it's getting some jitteries. That's why it's getting some resistance, because perhaps the big boys are feeling threatened because a small boy in the club is actually running away with it, and he might, place himself within the annals of history as having initiated this kind of initiative. So the big boys are perhaps panicked. However, when you look at the the initiative, of course, the provisions of the Punguza Mzigo Bill, perhaps there are some elements or some components which are not going down well with the anticipations of the popular majority of the Kenyans.
Yeah.
And there are others which are also not so bad.
Yeah.
But the requirements for some amendments within the Punguza Mzigo Bill initiative, for me, is key. But to me, I think it would have waited for the BBI initiative, or perhaps it would have actually seen a little bit of patience to see what the BBI comes on board with.
But you see, if we're being realistic in terms of the politics of it all, he's not...
It's about the politics
Yeah,
of it.
He doesn't want...
Yes.
He has no obligation to wait for the BBI. In fact, in this particular article, he's really hitting out at the BBI. First of all, he says he was pointing a finger at Parliament, which he said is currently bloated and should have legislators' numbers reduced, and the country would save 155 billion shillings. Then he also said he's faulting it, saying it is a state-funded initiative with an 11 billion budget, which he says is a waste, because if he can do it with his, as you're saying, his small, with smaller budget, small party, smaller team rather, and of course he's making wins with it. And on top of that, he says it is the BBI is not anchored in the law, and therefore he is pushing to have it actually disbanded.
I think, to me, when he talks about the BBI not anchored in law, for example, I will tell you that public participation is very key. When you look at the approach that he took, having over 1 million signatures within maybe a period of less than 1 month, having the same being verified by IBC successfully, to me, I think it actually brings out a lot of issues on how did he do it? Because when you look at the Okoth initiative, they were not able to, they were able to, gain 2.5 signatures within a period of 3 months. And again, this never saw the light of the day because IBC trashed it and saw a lot of discrepancies. So people asking themselves, how did the Okoth did it? How did he do this, in the sense that he was able to do what Okoth initiative was not able to do, with all its machinery, with all its so-called conducive climatical condition to thrive, but it never did it. So people asking themselves, how did you do it? So they are questioning the process, how he was able to do it, and they are saying, no, look here, there might be some gaps in terms of how you did it. And they are turning again to the BBI and saying, look, the BBI is an initiative of the handshake. It might not be anchored on law, but there's nowhere that it has to be anchored on law, as long as there's public participation. Citizen participation is key in ensuring
and that's
that
what even the BBI is trying to do.
Yeah, exactly. It breathes some life on the formation of it. And therefore, for me, although Okoth is saying that he doesn't have an obligation to wait for the results of the BBI, but I want to say that BBI, in terms of the approach, to me, sounds the best option, because, or the better option, because it picks the ideas, the minds of the people, and it puts it on paper.
All right.
Exactly.
Right. Now let's move on to another story that has to do with food security, which is a big issue we've had this year, amongst the many other issues that we've had. Now we're talking about Task Force on Maize. This is on page 4 of the Standard. Task Force on Maize, one cereal board privatized. Could this be the solution to our problems as far as availability of food is concerned? We've talked about importation, whether it's viable, to a point that the CS actually went back on his plan to do that. Now our team wants strategic grain reserve increased from 4 million to 6 million bags, and we're being told by various farmers in the country that the food is there, the maize is there, but then it has to do with administration. So perhaps this could be a solution to it, farmers' issues. And I mean, there's so many right now, but clearly the country needs to be fed.
Sure. I think I'm glad that you have brought up this issue, because the food security being one of the key items in Agenda 4 is one of the most outstanding, because a nation which is hungry is a nation which is not healthy nation. And all the other pillars are all anchored on food security, because a healthy nation is able now to carry on the issues of manufacturing.
It's a thinking nation.
Exactly. And a healthy nation, of course, is able to, propagate the ideals of the other agendas.
Yeah.
So to me, I think the issue of privatizing of matters of food security, especially of the issues of national cereals and the produce board, to me, I think it's something that we can talk about, think about it through and see what are the pros and the cons. Because privatization to me actually brings about that professionalism in terms of handling this key component of the country, especially the grain reserve, which has become an issue
or would
of
it
debate.
save us from the cartels, or would it actually increase access to the farmers?
Yeah, I think
what would privatization
comes
do?
with all issues to do with the professionalization in terms of handling this component. When you leave this to the public, mechanism of handling the way it has been handling, to me, I think it brings about not so much professionalism, being, induced in the whole management of this whole affair. But privatization to me comes with a better ways of doing things.
Yeah. Because they have much more to lose. It's more business oriented.
It is more business oriented, but at the same time, it ensures that there's a little bit of sustainability. Because if it's something that is handled with professional touch, it is highly likely to resonate with the needs of the people. Because there's a lot of research, there's a lot of a lot of care when handling this issue, because they know the blame will be there, and at the same time they know this is a profit-making entity. They will also be able to ensure that they cannot mess up with the whole component, because at the end of the day they are going to run into losses. It's like Safaricom. You see, if this was left to the public to run the affairs of Safaricom, for example, which is the most lucrative agents in this country, it will perhaps, if this was given to the public, perhaps it would have been mismanaged. But when it's handled by a key group of technocrats, I think to me the results normally speak for themselves.
Okay, if we go in that direction, hopefully we can strike off one of our many issues as a nation.
Exactly.
But, just to remind, this is also part of food security, is part of the Big Four agenda. So maybe this would aid in attaining that particular goal. Now on to the education sector as we wind up. We have page 7 telling us the TSC strikes Sosion off the tutor's role, and the teacher's employer said Sosion was behind the failure of teachers to show up for training in Kakamega, Bungoma, Kajiado, Machakos, Garissa, Siaya, Kisii, Nyamira, Vihiga and Kwale. And then there's yet another story on education on page 8, where we're being told regulator instructs JKUAT to review the award of 118 PhDs, and they go further to outline right there. There's a blurb, the colored part right there, the box that shows us some of the ways they think that the institutions have failed in ensuring that the PhDs are up to par. They're being told some students admitted for PhD did not have relevant academic bachelor's degree for admission into master's programs. University adopted systems where students are selected their preferred lecturers, and then we're also having lecturers, an average of one lecturer going supervising at least 13 PhD students in 1 year instead of the recommended maximum of 3 students. So a lot of loopholes, or rather weaknesses, have been highlighted in this particular story on page 8 of the Standard. What do you feel about it?
Well, I think for me, the issue of the 118, I think to me it's not news, because when you look at the statistics across all the public universities in this country, this number still, revolves around the average number of graduates on PhD program. And when you look at KU the other day, also, graduated of almost 100 or so on the same. And when you look at 118, this comes from all the satellite campuses across East Africa. Remember, this is Kenya, there's also Rwanda, there's also other countries where PhD students are also enrolled. And then the number to me doesn't look so high. What I need to ask myself, or what we need to ask ourselves, whether the processes were followed to the latter. And you remember that there were also some new changes that were initiated by the then Minister for Education, Dr. Matiang'i, who actually initiated a 15-month rule for students after they defend their seminar. They have to take 15 months, and this could have actually contributed as one of the factors to where students who were about to graduate before he actually brought this 15-month rule were affected. But when they all hit the 15-month rule, it was like this wall of 15 months was removed and they all graduated at the same time. Hence the huge number of graduates. But I need to look at the processes where a PhD student is supposed to. I think the bone of contention here mostly anchors on the issues of publication.
Yes, because they were talking about phantom journals that people are purporting to have published.
As a PhD student, you have to, publish into internationally recognized journals. But where the system is bent and the students are able to publish in funny-looking journals, I think that's where the problem should be looked into and ensure that students are able now to publish in the more internationally recognized journals. But to me, I think, having been part of the system, JQuat, I do not think the problem is as high as bad as highlighted, because I've gone through the rigors of the research and I know what the institution does to ensure that it does not, is not depicted in a bad light. I know JQuat is one of the most recognized and one of the most dependable institutions when it comes to offering PhD courses. And to me, I think the problem might have been overblown out of proportion by media, because as Quayle looks at the problems that are benefiting the whole exercise about the 118 graduates, I think to me there might be some technical issues, but they are not as big as outlined by media here.
All right, now, and that concludes our segment of Press Review. Thank you so much for your wonderful insights on the many stories that we have reviewed, and we're going to take a short break. When we come back, we'll have more for you.